So one of the things that when you talk about Enable India,
Yeah.
and when you say you've run campaigns like the See a Million, Hear a Million,
Yeah.
1,000 opportunities, 1,000 lives, 1,000 days. So
Correct.
you run many campaigns, and that's something that I was really fascinated by. So when you really are talking about the problem at the scale that you're talking, right, which is,
Correct.
there are almost like a billion people with disabilities across the world,
Correct.
and in India you got about 100 million people with disability. So
Absolutely.
therefore, given the scale of this problem, how do you approach a marketing problem like this? Because you are running this whole thing on scale. So how do you break it down, and how is this marketing very different from the traditional marketing that
Absolutely.
you see outside? So how do you see it as a difference?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. So, to just put it in the perspective that the scale that you are talking about, right? So, the WHO estimates about 15% of the population are having some form of the disability in countries like India. So, that if we take that and put it in perspective, it's actually larger than Australia, the population of Australia and UK and all of that. So we are dealing with such large, and there is a lot of diversity in when we talk about disability. It's not that all visually impaired, all deaf. Based on our affinity, maybe when we think about disability, maybe one or two things will come to our mind, but there are 21 disabilities,
Mm,
so it's
mm,
huge,
mm,
and so the challenge is also about it's not about the disability itself, but the consequences of disability. For
mm,
example, as an industry,
mm,
we are still at a stage where perhaps health industry was about say 300, 500 years ago, or
mm,
which is not organized. Perhaps there is no abundance. For example, in 16th century, perhaps everybody who's wearing specs today can be considered as a visually impaired because they
mm.
simply did not have access to specs.
Correct.
Maybe in 14th century, right? So, um, but today the wear class industry is huge.
Mm,
There is availability, there is abundance, the people have choices. How that happened? Because of availability and abundance. There are many actors came into the picture. There are a lot of professions emerged. There are opticians, there are people who ophthalmologists anyway. So technicians have come. Then the design, fashion industry came in and said, oh, it's no longer just about wearing
correct.
specs, but they have to be stylish and so on and so forth. So if you take that parallelly, right, like for example, like compare that with disability today, maybe the industry, there's so much need, but I think the resources, the availability of resources is not available, or even if they're available, people don't know where they
Mm,
are and things
mm.
like that. So that's the real challenge that we need to work on. So
No,
because it's the problem is so big and so deep,
mm.
the only way that we can actually make progress is working in collectives,
Okay. So what's a
because
collective?
yeah,
What's a
collective,
collective?
absolutely. So like a see a million or a hear a million coming together, right? Like,
Mm,
because everybody matters, every contribution matters. So
mm,
we need to design a way so
mm,
that every person, a small organization, big organization, or an individual can also contribute towards that larger goal,
mm.
right? Only then we will be able to make progress in to handle the problems like this, right? So that's why the collective approach in the first place.
So
And
how do you look at a collective campaign in Enable India? So how do you bring it together, and how do you scale it? Because like a typical not-for-profit, you are always resource crunched. So therefore,
absolutely,
you don't have enough resources to do the marketing. So
yeah,
therefore, at one end, let me break down the problem. You got
correct,
to reach out to people who are visually impaired, which is your audience that we are talking. Then
sure,
you got a stakeholder who has to provide them with opportunities, and
absolutely,
then you need donors to actually go back and then say, hey, I want to support a campaign like this. So how do
absolutely.
you bring all of them together, and how do you kind of organize a campaign like this?
Absolutely. I think the first thing we at Enable India learned to to set the narrative right, we first of all need to have a positive language,
Mm,
because language builds culture. And
mm,
that's something that I have seen in my own working experience, how language actually matters.
mm,
So one of the things that Enable India has always done is, as a contribution to the disability sector, is to actually revolutionize this language, change the language that has been used.
mm,
um, I'll give one example. uh, where I spoke about workplace solutions to open up job.
mm,
Generally, that solutions, giving solutions, is called as reasonable accommodations in developing nations,
mm,
right? Developed nations like countries like US, UK, and all that. People call it reasonable accommodation. That was okay in that context because it's just an accommodation. People do understand what it means. But bring it in the context like India, growing economy like India, and when you tell a company to say, "Hey, you have to provide a reasonable accommodation,"
mm,
what happens in the people's mind is that, okay, I'm making some accommodations to include persons with
mm,
disability.
mm.
The reasonable may not have the weightage, but it's about, I'm making an accommodation. That means I'm making something, I'm adjusting, or I'm making a
Correct.
small change
Mm,
so that to
mm.
include. So that means that I'm doing something extra.
Yeah, or almost
So
saying that it's almost like I'm doing a favor.
favor, right? So, but it's, what are they doing? It's all about giving the solution. For example, you and I today are able to have this conversation because we are using the solution called chair to sit.
Yeah,
You and I are using internet, recording studio to communicate. I'm not shouting from here to, I'm in Bangalore, you are in Bombay, and I'm not talking to you, shouting or troop up my, I mean, using my voice, right? So,
correct.
so you're using a solution. So we actually said it's about workplace solutions.
Mm,
So when we say with persons with disability, in my case, say visually impaired, can work on computer using screen reader, which is a workplace solution.
mm,
So number one, I think to bring to work in a large collectives, we need to set the narrative using the positive language,
mm,
right? That's why we use persons with disability and not differently abled or any of those things, because I think it's important to use the positive language.
mm,
Number two, I think the shared vision has to
mm,
be co-created.
mm,
It's not that somebody is telling us to do something.
mm,
And the co-creation, for example, in see a million, hear a million, this vision, this mission, when we created, all these missions are created, co-created with the stakeholders. That
okay.
organizations coming together, sitting down and say, what is that we want to do?
Mm,
And can we all rise above our own work? Can we think
mm,
about beyond, say, as an organization, beyond Enable India, somebody else beyond their organization? Can we look at, you know, can we do something more than just doing what we have been able to do?
mm,
That happens only when we co-create the vision together,
mm,
right?
mm,
I think that's the second part that I learned, that co-creation is important. I
mm,
think the third thing is having agency, because we can only build, as you rightly mentioned, build a campaign, build a brand for the mission
mm,
only when you give agency to everyone in the ecosystem.
mm,
What do I mean by giving agency, right? What they can contribute, not just viewing them as somebody who is consumers, but give them a role where they can contribute. For example, we have a very interesting program called Project Discovery,
mm,
which is so we realize that persons with disabilities actually use solutions every day,
mm,
uh, and these solutions are not necessarily always very high tech solutions.
mm,
And we realized this in a very very interesting conversation once with group of visually impaired. Once my
mm,
co-founder Deepesh was talking to visually impaired group of people and said, like, hey, in an Indian context, we all keep our toothbrush together, right? Like,
mm,
at family. So how do you pick up your, being visually impaired, your toothbrush? Because sighted would see green color, red color, and they pick up and start brushing.
mm,
How do you pick up? So then there are a group of, engineers were there. They were like, oh, maybe there has to be color recognizer and all that. One hand went up from the visually impaired committee and they said, I just do a scratch on the bottom of my toothbrush and put it there.
Mm.
Then I feel that scratch and pick it up. Somebody else said I put the rubber band and pick it up and things like that. So we realize that there are solutions everywhere. And in
Mm.
fact, the following question was about how do you put the toothpaste on the toothbrush?
Mm.
And again, one went hand up. They said, no, I don't align it on the toothbrush. I take the paste into my mouth and start brushing with my
Mm.
brush. Because
Mm.
it's about brushing, it's not about really
Correct.
putting the thing on the toothbrush.
Correct.
So
Correct.
what we learned is that it's important. There are solutions, and we need to really understand. So, uh, we launched this campaign called Project Discovery, project program called Project Discovery, where we said you are a person with disability or a caregiver or a rehabilitation specialist, educationalist. You keep innovating a lot of solutions on your day-to-day basis. Make a 2-minute video of your solution and send it. And the quality is
Okay.
not important. The quality of the video is not important. The solution is important. And for last 3-4 years, we are doing this video competition. Today, we have about 3,000 plus videos available.
Mm.
Why I'm talking about this? Because this is what is giving agency to people.
Mm.
In a campaign, in a mission mode, when you want to make a large change,
Mm.
where everybody should feel that they are contributors,
Mm. Mm.
they exercise their
Mm.
agency and
Mm.
provide. So it maybe that maybe what they are doing may think that, oh, I am just doing because out of my need. I'll tell you another solution that came
Mm.
in this competition, and I like this example a lot. I think it's from one of the northern states where this boy was not able to hold the pencil because of fine motor, gross motor issues.
Mm.
So what the parents did, the mother, I think, took a potato, put the pencil, and gave the potato to the kid.
Mm.
The This child started holding the potato, and they slowly started peeling the potato
Mm.
day by day, and the kid was able to hold the pencil.
Mm.
Now, that parent, mother would have invented out of necessity for that kid. But I'm
Mm.
sure if this is available for somebody else, they don't need to go through the same journey,
Correct. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah.
right? So in a large campaigns, we need to make ensure that the agency is with the people.
Mm.
So we spoke about language, we spoke about co-creation, we spoke about giving agency to people,
Mm.
and then it's about having the space for having a dialogue, review, and anything that we do is about constant communication. So
Yeah.
this is how we build um, large campaigns,
Mm.
and of course work with the stakeholders. So I hope that I answered your question.
No, it's a beautiful example of how how you empower the stakeholders
Yeah,
to just get involved, and that's a learning that every marketing department can take an example out of this, because you're actually talking about co-creation, you're talking about building empowerment to people who are involved. And I think
absolutely.
this is something that can be taken by any brand wanting to do marketing, but this really is a very, very powerful example